Hey, Fidelity, how can I remember to invest every month?
With the Fidelity app, you can choose a schedule and set up recurring investments in stocks and ETFs.
Oh, that sounds easier than I thought.
You got this.
Yeah, I do. Now, where did I put my keys?
You will find them where you left them.
Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC, member NYSE, SIPC.
This episode is brought to you by Tic Tac. Summer tastes like Tic Tac. Tantalize your taste buds this sunny season with citrus adventure and orange. 2 everyday flavors that bring summer in every. Tic Tac Citrus Adventure is a yummy, vibrant medley of lemon, lime, and mandarin. And Tic Tac Orange is the perfect mix of tangy and sweet. Visit us at Tic Tac USA on social to refresh your summer with Tic Tac.
The Red Apple Media Podcast Network presents This is Protecting America. Now, here's Emmy-winning journalist Rita Cosby.
Welcome to another edition of Protecting America. I'm Rita Cosby. U.S.-China trade talks continued this week in Europe as we also learned of more dangerous attempts by the CCP to try to infiltrate our nation. And joining us now to talk about the threats from China is the great Asia expert Gordon Chang. His Twitter feed is Gordon G. Chang, and his powerful books include Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America, also The Coming Collapse of China, and China is Going to War. Gordon, great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Rita.
What do you believe is the biggest threat from China right now?
Well, the most immediate one is the threat of invasive species and disease attacking our farms. The federal authorities have now charged 3 people with attempting to bring in a biological substance. This really is an attack on our farms because we have been seeing over the course of this half decade, China attempt to take down American agriculture. So, for instance, in 2020, Americans in all 50 states received seeds from China unsolicited. And that effort has continued through this year. Remember, Temu, the online Chinese retailer, has been sending seeds to Americans unsolicited. This looks like an attempt to plant invasive species, which, again, is an attack on our agriculture. So this really is a part of a broad-based attempt to make sure that Americans can't feed themselves.
How does that work by bringing in sort of this deadly pathogen, this fungus? How could that work so people understand how serious it is?
Yes. Well, if the researchers who were at the University of Michigan were able to, for instance, increase the transmissibility of the blight or make it more severe, this could certainly have maybe overwhelmed attempts to stop it. This is a fungus which is already in the United States, but they could have made it much more dangerous. We don't know exactly what they're doing, and we'll find out more as time goes on, but there are no good explanations for what these Chinese researchers are doing, and it looks like part of a broad-based pattern, which is essentially a biological attack on the United States. A biological attack on the United States with a weapon of mass destruction.
Which is really frightening. And it just shows how pervasive and how sneaky. How were they bringing these pathogens in? Do you know, were they mailing them? Were they bringing them on the plane? How were they transporting them?
They were bringing them on the plane, hiding them, for instance, in their shoes. So this was a smuggling attempt.
You know, you talked about University of Michigan. Why do all of these roads lately seem to lead to the University of Michigan, Gordon? What's going on there? And have you ever heard of the University of Michigan somehow being lenient on CCP attached individuals?
You know, I think that this is, of course, the University of Michigan, but I think this is occurring at other institutions in the United States. And I think as time goes on, we're going to be learning that more and more colleges and universities are the subject of research by Chinese who are attempting to up to no good. So this is not just the University of Michigan. I think this is broad-based.
You bring up Chinese students at schools, Gordon Chang. Chinese students compose an enormous part of many colleges, especially Ivy League. Is it because they pay full freight? There's obviously an attachment from the universities there, but we just saw even how many actually go to places like Harvard. Is that another way to sort of infiltrate and then have them, deep entrenched, especially in our American education system?
I believe so. Chinese students generally do pay full freight these days, and it gives China enormous leverage over educational institutions because the Chinese students are a significant portion of their tuition revenue. And this means that college administrators have been reluctant to allow, for instance, His Holiness the Dalai Lama to speak on colleges. And also, there's been a certain amount of self-censorship. Terry Link, the former Princeton professor now at the University of California at Riverside, talks about the anaconda in the chandelier. In other words, people self-censor because they see the snake up at the ceiling and they don't want it to come down and strike them. So really what we're talking about is an attempt to influence the narratives in American schools. And it's been working very, very well for China.
What's also the commitment to, when somebody, say, from China sends you over to the U.S., is it, you owe us because we sent you here, we know your family? How does the CCP sort of control individuals once they have them in their grasp?
Well, Chinese consular officials and Ministry of State Security agents monitor Chinese students when they're in the United States. Also, China has established the Chinese Students and Scholars Association, which has chapters wherever there are significant numbers of Chinese students. And that is used to monitor, coerce, and surveil Chinese students. So, Rita, this is an issue of China trying to control their students when they're outside China. But this is our country. We know what's going on. We have the means to break up these networks. We absolutely have to do this. So this is on us. And this is a failure. It's a failure of liberals and conservatives, Republicans and Democrats over the course of more than a decade. So this is now something that we have to deal with because this is our country.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
I'm Cyndi Lauper. My psoriasis was all over, even on my scalp, which may mean 4 times the risk for psoriatic arthritis. But Cosentyx works on both.
Cosentyx secukinumab is prescribed for adults with moderate to severe plaque psoriasis 300 milligram dose and adults with active psoriatic arthritis 150 milligram dose. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting, get checked for tuberculosis. An increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur, like tuberculosis or other serious bacterial, fungal, or viral infections. Some are fatal. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if inflammatory bowel disease symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions and severe eczema-like skin reactions may occur. Learn more at Cosentyx.com or 1-844-COSENTYX. Ask your doctor about Cosentyx.
Oh, it's such a clutch pickup, Dave.
I was worried we'd bring back the same team.
I meant those blackout motorized shades.
Blinds.com made it crazy affordable to replace our old blinds.
Hard to install?
No, it's easy. I installed these and then got some for my mom, too. She talked to a design consultant for free and scheduled a professional measure and install.
Hall of Fame son.
They're the #1 online retailer of custom window coverings in the world.
Blinds.com is the GOAT.
The GOAT!
Save up to 50% with minimum purchase at Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
This episode is brought to you by San Pellegrino. A meal isn't just about what's on your plate. It's about what you bring to the table. San Pellegrino believes the table is where the best of life happens. That's what makes gathering around it so rich and rewarding. And with their unique sparkling natural mineral water, San Pellegrino brings its best so you can bring yours.
Yeah, absolutely. And Gordon Chang, what about visas? We've heard President Trump of late obviously talking about revoking foreign student visas from places like Harvard. What about doing that sort of across the board? And there's discussion about that on Chinese students. And would that, even if they let them back into the fold, but have them heavily monitored, heavily surveilled, is there a way to do it to allow some in, but make sure they're ones with good intentions?
Yeah, well, Secretary of State Rubio has stated that the State Department will aggressively revoke visas of certain types of Chinese students, especially those with ties to the Communist Party. And this has, of course, gotten a lot of attention. People said that this is drastic, but we're being overwhelmed, Rita, and we do need drastic action, because if we don't, we're going to lose our country. So I think it's great that Secretary Rubio is doing this. And of course, also there's this whole issue of Harvard, which is a broader issue. But clearly we have had Chinese penetration of Harvard, and this has not been good for the United States. And I'm glad President Trump is taking the issue on, because it's absolutely necessary. Previous presidents have ignored what was going on at that institution and at others across our country.
You know, you talked about the CCP. What percentage of I guess Chinese are sort of run and owned by the CCP? Is it almost automatic that if a Chinese student's coming to America that they probably have ties to the CCP, or is it a certain percentage have ties?
We don't know the percentage that have ties. We have had surveys done which show that about 13% of Chinese students commit espionage. And that is because they, as I mentioned, are monitored and coerced by Chinese agents and Chinese diplomats. That's a very high number. And also, we know that a substantial number of Chinese students do have ties one way or another to the Communist Party. And again, this is a failure of the United States to vet visas before they're issued. So again, this is something that we can do better, and we absolutely must.
And, 13%, that's actually a big amount. What kind of espionage are they being recruited for?
For instance, downloading whole databases. There was a story at the Stanford student newspaper about how an Ministry of State security agent was trying to find out research projects that Chinese students were working on. And that would give China a hint at what the United States was thinking about. So there's all sorts of information that the Ministry of State Security has been trying to find out. And, people have focused in on Stanford, but this is across the board. Every place that there are Chinese students, this occurs.
Where are they attracted to Ivy League schools? Is there a place that they're more attractive than others?
I think it's all of the above. And clearly there are a lot of Chinese students at the Ivies. And that's because those are elite institutions. But as mentioned, the most recent story was Stanford, another elite institution. So we can assume that wherever there are Chinese students, there is going to be a problem.
Yeah, you can bet that you would assume it's definitely going to be that. The other thing, too, what about Taiwan? How big of a schism is that between the U.S. and China? We're obviously on so many different pages on that.
Well, the Trump administration has not been clear about what it would do on Taiwan. The Biden administration, President Biden 4 times said he would defend Taiwan. But we're seeing from the Trump 45 administration to the Biden administration to Trump 47, hardening of the American position on Taiwan, which is good. We are seeing much more involvement of the U.S. military in Taiwan, and we are seeing greater military sales and also diplomatic engagement between the United States and Taiwan. So this has been a long-term trend, and that's a good thing because it shows that there's a bipartisan consensus that the United States should protect Taiwan. And Xi Jinping, who has staked his legitimacy on annexing the island, is apoplectic about it. But the United States needs to stand with its friends because Taiwan, especially after the fall of Afghanistan, Taiwan has become the test of American credibility and resolve, not just in East Asia, but around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about TikTok? How big of a division, how big of a threat do you believe TikTok poses between China and the U.S.? I know President Trump is trying to figure out a way to have U.S. at least control and U.S. ownership of it. But how much do you think that is sort of infiltrating, obviously gathering the data of so many young people across America or across the globe?
Yeah, there are two critical national security threats that TikTok poses. First is the one that you mentioned, data. China's been using TikTok to scoop up enormous amounts of data from Americans. And TikTok has violated every single pledge it has made to the United States about data security. But the greater national security threat is the curation algorithm. That's the algorithm that determines what TikTok users see and what they don't see. And China has been using that to amplify all sorts of narratives. So, for instance, illicit drug use. It promotes illicit drug use in the United States. But when it comes to things like Russian disinformation about the Ukraine war, that's also pumped out through TikTok. And on Hamas, 96.5% of the videos on that terrorist group, they support Hamas. So you can see that this is across the board. It's an attempt to influence the American public, and it's been very successful. One reason why we have so many college kids supporting barbarism, rape, murder, torture is because the Chinese are there. And right now, they are fomenting the riots in Los Angeles. So this is across-the-board use of propaganda to take down the U.S. We should not permit this.
Yeah, and that's why a lot of, who's it? Senator Tom Cotton, for example, has been very vocal against it. What about also, you and I talked a while ago, and I always think about this, Gordon, these military-age men, well-dressed, came across the border in droves. What were they doing? Do we have any idea where they are in America? I mean, the effects of this wide open border has been disastrous. But when I hear and think of well-dressed men, and I think you mentioned they even were going to like a gun range at one point, that's frightening.
Yes. Over the course of the Biden administration, there was, of course, a surge across our southern border. And when we saw a change in composition of the Chinese migrants, in the beginning of the surge, they were basically desperate Chinese who wanted to live in a free society. But towards the end, U.S. Border Patrol noticed that something like 2/3 of the migrants at some border crossings, 85%, were single males of military age, traveling without family members, some of them pretending not to speak English, and Border Patrol knows that some of them had links to the Chinese military. In the very last days of the Biden administration, Border Patrol was noticing packs of 4 to 15, everybody fitted out in identical kit. And this phenomena has also coincided with an increase in incursions, attempted incursions, and illicit surveillance of our military bases by the Chinese migrants. So we know that they're here. They're studying our patterns. They're looking for our vulnerabilities. They're planning attacks. And by the way, Rita, it's not just our southern border, it's our northern border as well, because the Chinese have come across that as well. We're seeing, in February of last year, for instance, Border Patrol apprehended 3 Chinese migrants who were attempting to sneak into the U.S., into Maine, under cover of darkness. And what was ominous was that there was a 4th Chinese migrant on our side of the border who was obviously there by prearrangement to help the other 3 get in. So really what we have right now is an attack on the United States by these military-age males who are here ready to strike.
Let's pick up, if we can, Gordon, on the aspect of the military. How strong is China's military right now?
Well, China's military right now, I think, is in a state of turmoil because I think Xi Jinping has lost substantial influence, if not control, of the military. And we're seeing this because Xi Jinping's loyalists are being axed. And a lot of people have said, well, Xi Jinping has gotten rid of his own men, but that is unlikely. And the reason is that since July 9th of last year, PLA Daily, which is the main propaganda organ of the Chinese military, has been running articles praising, quote-unquote, collective leadership. That is a direct slap at Xi Jinping's style of one-man rule and the demand for complete obedience from the military. So it appears that the number one uniformed officer in the military, General Zhang Yushao, is very much in control, and he does not like Xi Jinping. This means that the Chinese military probably is not ready to fight a major battle. It can still engage in low-level provocations, as it has been over the last 6 weeks especially. But in terms of a major fight, I think that the generals and admirals right now are fighting each other more than they're thinking about fighting Taiwan or the United States.
How much more advanced, though, are they Navy-wise than America? That seems to be the area where China seems very robust.
Yeah, China has a bigger Navy, got more ships than we do. The ships are unproven, and there are indications that they're not very good. But as they say in the military, quantity has a quality all its own. And China actually has some weapons that we don't have, and they could be game changers, like certain types of hypersonic cruise missiles, and maybe tipped with nuclear weapons. So, yes, we have to be concerned about that. But, in terms of actual ability to win a war, we would only know that if there were a war.
You talked about the hypersonic. That is the big thing. I mean, are we prepared should it ever get to that? God forbid.
Well, probably not. And we are racing now to close our gaps of vulnerability. Also, we know China in general, apart from the Navy, has these hypersonic glide vehicles that can circle the Earth. And we have no defense against that, which is the reason why President Trump just talked about the Golden Dome, which he wants to have up and running in 3 years. So this is, again, a vulnerability. We developed hypersonic flight, and we decided not to pursue it with the vigor that was necessary. And now both the Chinese and the Russians are more advanced in hypersonic flight than we are.
Do you think we can create, Gordon, a schism with Russia and China? That seems to be one of the things, like even in discussions that Trump is having with Putin. Obviously, the big objective clearly for him is China. And also, he's trying to also create a certain schism, maybe to help Russia help us with Iran. Is there a role that Russia can play? Do you think we can kind of try to break the access, if you will, of Russia, China, Iran, that group?
No, I don't think so, because Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping see the world in the same terms. They identify their interests in the same way, and they both believe the United States is their enemy. So I don't think that we can woo Vladimir Putin from China. And even if we could, it would be wrong to do so, because Vladimir Putin has been committing acts of genocide. His military, as a matter of policy, has been involved in the rape and the brutality of the Ukrainian people. He's an aggressor, and to side with him would be a betrayal of everything it is to be an American and American ideals.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm the daughter of a Polish resistance fighter. I totally understand that. What about some of the words from Democrats? It's been incredible. You probably saw this. Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs, she had a bill that essentially prevents the blocking of limiting Chinese land ownership right near our U.S. military bases. You would think that would be a no-brainer.
You would think so, and the fact she vetoed it really is extremely disturbing. There's Luke Air Force Base, which is near Phoenix, and a Chinese party tried to rent a warehouse space at one end of one of the runways and was blocked from doing so. And then 6 months later tried to rent space at the other end of that same runway. So we know that there really is an attempt for the Chinese to not only surveil, but also probably to disrupt operations at Luke. Now, this was renting of warehouse space and not the ownership of land, but the principle is the same. And the governor of Arizona should have taken all steps to protect not only her state, but the United States. So what she did was wrong.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold! Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Look around. You can find cars like these on AutoTrader, like that car right in your tail. Or if you're tailgating right now, all those cars doubling as kitchens and living rooms are on AutoTrader too. Are you working out and listening to this ad at the same time? Well, multitasking pro, cars like the ones in the gym parking lot are for sale on AutoTrader. New cars, used cars, electric cars, maybe even flying cars. Okay, no flying cars, but as soon as they get invented, they'll be on AutoTrader. Just you wait. AutoTrader.
BTW, FYI. Visit Nexplanon.com RN to learn about Nexplanon. It's an adjustable implant, 68 milligrams radio pain. Or ask your HCP IRL. Okay, TTYL.
At the UPS Store, we want to make this summer the summer of shipping. Summer Shipalooza. So you can start crossing items off your must-ship list. Like the vintage film camera your college kid needs for class. Or the vase you told your mom you would send her ages ago. And with our pack and ship guarantee, your items arrive safe or we reimburse you. So stop by your local store today for everything you need to be unstoppable. Visit the upsstore.com/guarantee for full details. Available at participating locations. Most locations are independently owned. Product, services, pricing, and hours of operation may vary. See Center for details. The UPS Store. Be unstoppable.
Yeah. And, finally, I think about the spy balloon. I mean, they were traversing, it seemed, well over a whole bunch of U.S. military bases. We know that that's something of interest to the Chinese. There was also that individual, remember, who was arrested not that long ago for spying on a U.S. military base. He was Chinese.
Vandenberg Space Force Base.
Yep.
Yeah, that balloon not only went over military sites, it went over nuclear weapon sites. Maelstrom, F.E. Warren, and Minot Air Force bases, where we have all of our Minuteman III intercontinental ballistic missiles. It went over Omaha, Nebraska, which is Offutt Air Force Base, the home of U.S. Strategic Command, which controls all U.S. nuclear weapons. And as it was exiting the U.S., it flew over Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, where we have all of our B-2 strategic bombers. That means China is preparing a first nuclear strike on the United States.
That's really incredible. I mean, how far away, if that were to even come to a full-fledged planning phase? I mean, do you believe that's wishful thinking, or where are they at on that when you hear that kind of a comment?
Well, when we see the balloons track, we have to believe that they are planning a first strike on the U.S., which is not to say that they will do it, but clearly that is what they were planning to do. So we have to take that on board. And unfortunately, we have a military right now which is only beginning to understand the nature of the threat and the urgency of it.
Yeah, well, thank goodness the military is at least well aware of the threat from China. And like you said, beefing up, recruitment is up too in U.S. military. The focus is up certainly under this president, no doubt. Wow. Well, Gordon Chang, you are terrific. Thank you so much just for all this information. You always are just a treasure trove of information. It's so important. And everybody be sure to subscribe and share to this podcast. And Gordon Chang, I want to tell everybody your Twitter again is Gordon G. Chang. And also be sure to check out your really important, powerful books and someone who certainly knows his stuff about China. Gordon, thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Rita. I really appreciate it.
And everybody, I'll be back soon with another great edition of Protecting America. And of course, you can catch me every weeknight, 10 p.m. to midnight on the legendary WABC Radio. This is Rita Cosby, and thanks for all you do to protect America.
Ever get the feeling you're being watched online? It's data brokers. They collect your personal info, your browsing habits, where you live, and who you're related to, and then sell it to the highest bidder. Aura helps stop that. Aura automatically removes your personal info from data broker sites and keeps it off. It also monitors the dark web, protects your devices, alerts you to real-time threats, and more. Start your free trial at aura.com/listen. That's AURA.com/listen for your free trial.